وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Continuing in our readings of the book معالم في طريق طلب العلم, Milestones in the path of seeking Islamic knowledge, Sheikh Abdul Sadhan, Habibullah Ta'ala. Last week we stopped in the discussion where the Sheikh was still discussing some of the things that help in the etiquettes and the manners of the halaqat and the talib ilm in general. And we discussed attending classes, the importance of that, etiquettes in relation to sitting in the class when the teacher is speaking. And then the Shaykh moves into the next issue, where he says, Al-Amru Ashir, the 10th issue, and adab fi tarhi su'al ala Shaykh. Etiquette in posing questions to the Shaykh. And he says that we see and hear in some scholarly circles that some students ask a question that's clearly pretentious. What's even more shocking and serious is that they already know the answer, but they ask this question that they already know, but they ask the Shaykh the question to challenge him, or to silence him, or to demonstrate that they have knowledge. And then you see, he sends the questioner discreetly revealing the answer to the Shaykh, and therefore they have been impolite, imposing their questions, and have bad manners in their intent to challenge the Shaykh, and impolite in their intent to challenge the knowledge and the intention that they have. And then the Shaykh mentions a story to show this, that this is not the adab when it comes to asking a question, that someone asks a question in order to show everyone that he knows, or to make the Shaykh or the teacher make a mistake. And to bring this example, he brings a narration. Imam Zahabi mentions in Siyar A'lam al-Nubala that Imam Malik rahimahullah was sitting one day in one halaqah, and one of the students who studies with him, he came to the class. And this student, this Shaykh, his name is Ismail ibn Bint Suddi. He's a well-known narrator, Ismail ibn Musa. So he says, I was in the class with Imam Malik, and a question appeared or came up في مسألة فرضية, in the issue related to inheritance. فأجاب بقول زيد رضي الله عنه. So Imam Malik, he gave the answer in accordance to the words and the position of Zayd ibn Thabit رضي الله عنه. As we know, he's the expert when it comes to inheritance. So Ismail, he says then, I said, what did Ali ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhuma say about that issue? So Imam Malik, when he heard this, he signaled to the security, and he said then, the narrator, when I saw them coming, I ran, and I left my books and my pens there. Imam Malik's majlis is a security, and this is the past as well. You don't behave, you're gonna find out the hard way. So he said I left. So then we asked the security or the guards, what should we do with his books and his inkwell that he left? He said, ask him to come back gently. So when he came back, right, he said, I came back and I asked, the Malik asked me, where are you from? He said, I come from Kufa. And he said, then where did you leave your manners? And what kind of question was that? What kind of response was it? And when the answer was given with the position of Zayd bin Thabit, that he said Ibn Mas'ud and Ibn Ali. So he said to him, I only said this in order to remind you of the benefit. Malik then said to him, the merits of Ali and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud are well known, undeniable. But the people in our city, he means Medina, we take the view of Zayd bin Thabit. So when you come to a people and you tell them opinions that they're not familiar with, it will only end up in them disliking it. And so here the lesson the Shaykh's drawing is that this is kind of etiquette is not correct. That when the teacher gives a view or position, let's say there's difference of opinion or different views, you don't have to mention the different views because maybe he didn't mention it for a reason. Or if you're really interested in knowing it, you can come after. But let's say no one knows there's difference of opinion, or they're beginners, and you raise the questions above their level, then it becomes a fitna. This narration has some weakness, but there's another narration that's similar to it, that asking questions in the class has etiquette. And before mentioning that, the Shaykh brings a second story to show this. That if a person is trying to benefit, he says, what if someone wants to say, shouldn't we discuss the matter or debate it? He says, yes, but politely, especially with the Shaykh, since discussing with him has etiquettes and benefit. Means even if you're doing munaqasha, debate, or discussion with the Shaykh, there's etiquette. You can't just pose a question or challenge him, because then at the end you're going to end up harmed. And we said this before, but some of the Salaf, they mentioned that because they were harsh with their teacher, they were barred from his knowledge. He prevented them from their knowledge because he didn't answer their questions anymore, or the Shaykh, he stopped talking to them because of that. So the second story he brings, also found in Siyar A'lam al-Nubala of Imam Zahabi rahimahullah, that he brings a story of one of the ulama of Al-Andalus, Shabtun his name is, and he says that he was sitting once in a gathering and a piece of paper was brought to him in which the questioner said or asked about the scale of the sultan and the pans on two sides of the scale. Are they made of gold or silver? And imagine this kind of question. One wants to know the scale of the sultan. Is it gold or silver? Which one? Right? So this is not a question someone is seeking knowledge. Somebody trying to critique their ruler. So Shabtun, he turns the paper around and writes back, and he gave it back to him. From the good hadiths of Islam, a good Islamic person leaves out that wasn't to concern him. Well, that's the jawab. Because what kind of question is that anyways? And some people, that's what they do. They ask a question, and what about so-and-so? You don't even learn from him. You don't even go there. Why are you asking? Because maybe you want to create some kind of fitna. And we have to be mindful of that some questions are best not to be answered. And if the teacher refuses to answer a question, there's a reason. There's a reason. Sometimes bad etiquette, sometimes bad question, sometimes bad intention. And if someone wants more on that, Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh, he has, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, he has a lecture on that. And also it's been transcribed and put in his book, At-Tariq ila Nabugh Ilmi, and where he has the discussion about the etiquettes, Adab al-Su'al. So page 215 of that book, Adab al-Su'al, it's a lecture when they put in this book called At-Tariq ila Nabugh Ilmi. And that's a very good book in terms of these various elements of skills and sets and behaviors and characters and research, all things students' knowledge and needs. And he mentioned the Shaykh up to maybe 12 or 13, different etiquettes that a student should have when it comes to asking a question. So it's a good place to look and to read that and listen to that lecture. So that's the benefit here, number 10. Al-Amr al-Hadi Ashar, the 11th one, Al-Iktisabu min khuluq al-Shaykh, acquiring the qualities or the character of the Shaykh. And he says that someone might ask, should I attend a lesson from a Shaykh whose teachings I only understand a little bit? And he is told, attend, for the purpose of attending is not merely to gain academic benefit or knowledge-based benefit. I mean, some people ask the question, should I come to the class? I don't understand the subject. But you may get some other benefits like learning character, manners, and other things like this. And this we said before, and Shaykh repeats it. Imam Ahmed rahimahullah in his majlis, people used to come just for akhlaq and adab. So it's mentioned that 500 people wrote the hadith from 5,000, and the rest of the people, so 4,500 of them, were only there to learn from his character and his manners. And so this is one of the benefits coming to class, to take from the etiquette of the teacher. And the Shaykh, then he brings, when he explains this point, because he repeats those points to highlight this is one of the benefits that are coming, but also what the student now should be doing. He also pays attention to that attending in class is not just for the sake of acquiring knowledge or comprehending an issue, rather it's also imperative that one benefit from everything else, even from some of the students of knowledge present, for perhaps their character will influence you. And that's another benefit. You learn from one another, your good character, and each other sharing benefits and reminders. And this is a benefit when it comes to class versus people online, because you can't interact with your fellow brothers and the sisters with their fellow sisters. And then he mentions even a student knowledge should not cease visiting the scholars for the benefit of that it comes by way of it. Even, indeed, this is part of the student's good manners with his teachers, for they are the ones who bestow upon him through the blessings, right, upon him to the permission of Allah in teaching him. And even if they're not his teachers, it is part of recognizing the rights of the ulama. Right? So going back to the hadith, وَلَمْ يَعْرِفْ لِعَالِمٍ حَقَّهُ, doesn't know the rights of the scholar. One of the scholars' rights, that we visit them when they're healthy, visiting them when they're sick, and attending their funerals. This is important. That's why you see when the shuyukh pass, people are attending. Some who are not even direct students, but everyone is attending. So when they're alive, coming to visit them, to talk, ask about them, to ask them questions, just even visiting them in a city. And this is the character of the tulab al-ilm, the people of khair. But also when they're sick, visiting them, and then if you're able, and also at their funerals. And then he mentions now the Shaykh, whenever a student of knowledge senses that the teacher might criticize him for not visiting him, he should hasten to recognize or reconnect with him and acquire this merit and offer an apology. And he should know that if he ceases to visit him, the visits of that teacher include those who are highly regarded than him or more highly regarded than him. And this is a benefit that we find, that sometimes when a student becomes independent or he himself has his own da'wah, he might not come visit the Shaykh anymore, his old teacher. And this is not the best etiquette, especially if you know that the teacher is still alive, but also if you would like that you visit him. So sometimes what happens is that there's no connection anymore, it's as if you just left him. So the best etiquette is to continue to benefit from the teacher, benefit, you ask about him, make dua for him. If you're in the same city, come visit him. And these are etiquettes that the Salaf used to have. And even you find in the examples today, to the narrate, for example, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, rahimahullah, one day an old man came to visit him, and the Shaykh came and honored him. And students were confused because the Shaykh looked like a Ami person. And then when he left, they asked him, Shaykh, who's this? He said, it's my old teacher. He first taught me some studies when I was younger. So obviously, the Shaykh of Uthaymeen is bigger status than him, but the way he honored him, the students were impacted. This is an Ami person according to them, but he's a teacher. So imagine someone taught you even one letter, still as a teacher, it's good etiquette to have with them. But some people, you see them, as was an example, that when they learn something, the teacher's beneath them, or they don't even care. And he mentions an example. Al-Husayn bin Fadl, one of the Imams himself, when he grew old, one day he was sitting, and he was like in a stretcher or a place where the people would come visit him, or he's very old. So one day a big student of knowledge passed by with a group of people around him. So Al-Husayn bin Al-Fadl said, when he raised his eyebrows to the gathering, he said, who are those? Who's that person? They said, so-and-so person, and a group of people following him. So he said, SubhanAllah, glory be to Allah, Ishaq bin Rahawiyya and Muhammad Rafi' used to come visit us in this house, but this so-and-so person passes by without giving salam. Right, and so this is narrated by Imam Zahabi as well. So this is the point that we see, like this etiquette here, that even if somebody is beneficial or benefited, doesn't mean they shouldn't visit the person who benefited from them, or is their teacher, or at the very least, even if they're not their teacher, out of respect for the person of knowledge. And the story I was mentioning, highlighting before, talking about the etiquette of the questions, Imam Zahabi also brings, and this is an authentic narration, the story of Hisham bin Ammar and how he learned knowledge and what happened between him and Imam Malik. So he said that Imam Malik, rahimahullah, in his gathering is very strict. So obviously if you come and you misbehave, you will be disciplined by the guards. And we know of that because the man who asked a question about the istawa, what happened to him, he was ousted from the masjid. But that's because Imam Malik rahimahullah was known for this, the strictness, and also the respect for him. So Hisham bin Ammar is one of the students of Imam Malik, Sahib al-Hadith, Ahl al-Hadith. He says himself, باع أبي بيتا له ب20 دينارا. My father, he sold the house that he owned for 20 dinar. وجهزني للحج, and he prepared me for go for Hajj. فلما سرت إلى المدينة, when I finished and I went to Medina after, أتيت مجلس مالك, I came to Malik's gathering. ومعي, he said, have me مسائل أريد أن أسأله عنها. I had a lot of questions I wanted to ask Imam Malik. So I came to him, and he was sitting in the gathering, جالس في هيبة الملوك, like as if in the gathering, like with the respect of the kings. Right? This is how the kind of gathering was. And the people were sitting with them like children or youngsters. When Nas يسألونه, people were asking him and he was answering one by one. So he said, then when I came to the gathering, and he said some of them, they told me about, right, the people of Hadith, etc. And he said, so I went and I just asked. And he said, ask what you have. So I said, oh, Abdullah, what do you say about such and such? What do you say about such and such? And then he said, because I was young, I got carried away, right? And eventually I was taken out of the gathering due to the way I was approaching it. And I was beaten by, right, the guards or the older students, 17 durra, 17 times. And some narration mentioned less. And so after that, he said, I started crying. So after this, they told Malik what happened to me. So he came out to me and he said, why are you crying? And he said, because I've been beaten. And my father sold his house for me to seek knowledge and to learn and benefit, to honor me with the hadith studies, but I would end up being beaten. So Imam Malik said, write down. And he narrated 17 hadith for the 17 healings that he gave. So after that, he told him, Hisham ibn Ammar, that increase in the beating, so he increased in the hadith. Malik laughed but with that and said, idhab, go. So this story, obviously, many of us, we heard it, but the benefits are many. But the one of them we just want to take is that point about the question, that he was asking questions in an appropriate manner. Not getting carried away one after another, or he's asking in a way that's not respectful of the gathering. So at the end of the day, could be a reality that some of the students, or some people now on the WhatsApp, they ask a question, then they keep reminding, and Sheikh, you forgot, and you're not going to get jawab then. If you ask like that, you don't get anything. Because sometimes even the question might not be the best, or maybe requires bahth. So even if somebody notices that you send a question, doesn't come to you, just wait. And maybe if you forgot, you come remind nicely. But sometimes what happens is even these etiquettes, they prevent us from learning because we're not learning the first etiquette. How do you ask? So if you go back to that book, brothers and sisters, recommended to see what questions we should be asking, how to ask them, and also what do we do if, for example, we didn't get the answer we're looking for. As Shaykh mentioned a lot of benefits. And from there is asking many teachers or many scholars for one issue. You're wasting time, ulama said. If someone give you the answer, why you go another one asking again? You don't have enough. And he said most of the problems come from there. Shaykh gives you one view, when gives you another view, you got confused. Ya Abi, why you ask? Now you have two opinions, you don't know which is correct. You should have one opinion, it's better for you. Right? So some people, they don't know. So what's the better? Ask someone you trust, take what they give you. Let's say it's an issue that requires more than that, or you're able to know difference, then khalas. But what happens sometimes, people going around asking everybody the same question, or you ask the same question multiple times, and if you go back to that book, you'll find great benefit in there. طيب, now the Shaykh moves into an issue regarding the benefits of books, and how we can benefit from the books, and also how to benefit ourselves in our seeking of knowledge. And he ends this chapter with this discussion. He says the first mas'ala, قراءة كتب الحث على طلب العلم. The first benefit that helps a student knowledge is that he reads books that encourage the pursuit of knowledge. And so this is important. If a person begins and embarks in the pursuit of knowledge, he must find things that will sharpen his enthusiasm, strengthen his resolve. And there's nothing after Allah's guidance than reading the religious texts on this topic better than what has been narrated from the righteous Salaf and their trustworthy narrators. So the Shaykh then he mentions that these books, they increase us, especially at the time at the beginning of your seeking of knowledge, about the love for knowledge, ambition. He said reading these books raises one's ambition, also removes self-admiration. And one of us may feel self-admired when he reads or memorizes a piece of knowledge, but if he reads the biographies of the Salaf and the scholars on seeking knowledge and sees their example, then he knows that he even reach 1/10 of their level, and his admiration will dissipate and his self-admiration will disappear. Then the Shaykh mentions a long list of books, right? So many of them on page 70 to 71 of different books just written on the topic of adab طلب العلم. For example, adab طالب العلم, طالب الحديث from Qadir Baghdadi, and he brings on others, so many of them, right? So up to he numbers them up to 32 of them. So a person, he should try their best to read more of them, especially when he finds the enthusiasm is going down. Right? Because every good deed, it has a shirra, a high point, then it comes with a fatra, when you're going down. So the day someone is feeling weak now, he's not coming to the classes, how do you get back? Read these books. Read about the importance of the talab al-ilm, the salaf in their journey, and what to study. And it will encourage us to learn more. So I would encourage the brothers to go back, page 70 and 71 of the book. The Shaykh mentioned so many of them. And some ulama, they prefer other books over others. Some of them about adab, talab, some of them about fadl al-ilm, some of them about other things, biographies, nasaih, talib al-ilm, Ibn Jawzi, some like this. But one of the most amazing of them, in terms of the benefits, Miftah Dar al-Sa'ada, Ibn Qayyim, rahimahullah. And some of it, I think, is translated. In that, he mentions so many benefits. And many ulama, they recommend that book because it's so interesting about the fadl al-ilm, and it comes from so many angles. From the Quran, Sunnah, from even the universe. Right? It shows different examples of knowledge over ignorance. And so it's one of the most interesting of them. But of course, there's so many. So someone should read that, especially when the zeal is dying down, or you feel you're getting lazy, or you're getting inclined to dunya too much, and you're not really learning anymore, right? Try to read those books, encourage you. And this is ongoing. Al-Mas'ab al-Thaniya, the second one now, he says, Qira'ah, the reading of the Tarajum ba'd ulama, the biographies of some of the ulama. And he says he encourages the brothers, all of them, to read and to take from their time a portion, even if it's little, for the reading of the biographies of the ulama. Because in their biographies is a relaxation, and also enjoyment, and also great benefit. So that's the pastime of the talib al-ilm. He's tired of his studies, you can read some biographies, contemporary ulama, past ulama, and to learn about the different things that happen to them, and you'll enjoy it a lot. Why? Because you learn so much about their lives, people who you benefit from, but also some things you can relate to your own life. So I highly recommend that. Some of the biographies of ulama, they come in the durus. Right? So some of the scholars, when they teach, they explain while they're teaching something that happened to the Shaykh so and so. So this one, for example, if you go to the Sharh Bulugh Maram, Shaykh Atiyya ibn Salim, he mentioned in there a lot of the stories between him and Alamat al-Shinqiti, his teacher. And he mentioned some stories no one knows except for him because he's one of the close students. And some of the stories are very nice about why, for example, questions, why do you teach tafsir and usul, he said. I asked him one day, privately, I was scared he was going to get angry at me. But because I'm closer to him, I said, Shaykh, I want to ask you, why all usul fiqh and tafsir? Why you don't teach other subjects? Because you're bahr, you know all of it. Then he gave me a long answer, and he explains everything. And he's teaching him why he doesn't focus a lot on that. And these kinds of stories that gave you encouragement as well about learning, but also what we can do with our pastime, and better than this. And also allows you to feel energized. So that's a second benefit. So of course, if you have time, you read them. And it's also the haqq of the ulama, we know them. Right? Some of us, we might not even know some of the ulama, you have to know them. Those who passed and those who are alive. What's their biography? How long did they study? What do they study with? What they specialize in? Because these are shuyukh. Right? So for example, someone today, they ask you about somebody, and you say, I don't know. It's Ahl Sunnah, we have to know. So it's very beneficial as well. Third one, تسجيل فوائد على غلاف الكتاب من داخل, right? So من الداخل, he said to record the benefits on the inner cover of the book. And he mentioned it already, right? The procedure, if you guys remember, he talked about that benefit, and that's the advice the ulama they give when you read a book to keep the benefits in that book, so that when you need to review it, you open the front cover and you get all the benefits that you have in there. The fourth issue, gathering the fawaid if they are separated or scattered in different books. So different benefits you read that are beneficial to you on one topic, scattered in different books, you gather them in, all right, in one place. So you could do that in your notebook, or you could do it in one book. So let's say, for example, you're studying an issue in Aqidah, and you read another book, and that book, the Shaykh mentioned something else, Aqidah. You take it from there and you put in the book of the Aqidah. So that's your marja', your reference, everything you have in there. So some of the shuyukh, that's what they do, and they encourage. For example, in Aqidah, the marja' is Sharh Tahawiyah, Ibn Izz al-Hanafi, for example. That's like the book that has the final book, most ulama advice for all the misal Aqidah, the details of it. So what do? You get different fawaid, you put in there. Because whenever you go back there, you read it, everything you get from there, for example. So that's a benefit as well. Some people like do notebooks. It's okay, that's all good too, different notebooks. Then fifth benefit, he says reading about different mawadi' or munasabat, right? Different seasons and positions or timings of the year before they occur. So for example, he says, let's say Ramadan's about to come in. Then this time is a good time to begin, to spend some time reading right before, قبل هذا الشهر, before it comes in, by some weeks, some books on siyam, fasting, and listen to lectures on fasting, and the lectures and the different conferences on that topic. Why? So that you can prepare yourself to have that knowledge. Another example would be the khutbahs, right? For example. So the khutbahs are going to be on that topic. People are going to ask you a question on the topic. So what do? You prepare that topic. Your own self and others. Another example, it says, from the things which are rare, right? From that nawazil kal-kusuf, right? For example, like the eclipse prayer and stuff like this, right? To know some of those matters because they could occur, you will know about it. So you're prepared ahead of time. And this is also beneficial as well. Everyone, for example, the Hijjah, the Fada'il, comes every year. So every year you do muraja of that topic. So at least you try to prepare before it comes. Otherwise, it's an opportunity. It's also a good way to give people reminders. And this is also important in general. Like anytime you're looking at the calendar, you look at the days, where are we, how far are we, and you benefit from that. And if someone wants to know all the fada'il of these things, you go to the kitab for the seasons, even Rajab. Al-Lataf al-Ma'arif, he has in there all the seasons and all the fada'il and all the ahkam. So you just kind of go through there. And it's even in English, I think, the book, the whole thing. Masala Sad, it said number 6, being eager in buying the books which are unique or separate, in separate books or independent books, في مسائل الفقهية الخاصة, in specific fiqh matters. So for example, books are just related to witr and related to i'tikaf and things like this. So he said these kinds of books, even if it's small, in it there's going to be a lot of benefits because the person is going to bring a lot of references, a lot of benefits in the pages which you can benefit from different masail. And this is a good topic as well to have to have different books on certain topics where you go back to that book whenever you want to know that topic, because it has all the details. Someone does a deep dive on this topic only. So in your library you have some of those books. And now there's some books which have like mawsu'at, encyclopedias full of all of them. But the point is you have to have certain books where you go back to. If someone asks you a question, you're going to check there. So it makes your job easier. The seventh benefit he mentions, trying to attempt to understand the book, even if it requires you to read it once or twice, right? More than once or twice, and repeat it one time or two times. So some books, he says, if you read a book And if one of us reads a book, he says it's not sufficient or not the case that he's going to understand every page or the 2 pages. Right? He's going to read 1 or 2 pages, he's going to understand it like this. Rather, he tries to understand what's on it and all that he's read, and this will require that he has to repeat the book. And he gives the example. Al-Muzani, rahimahullah, the great student Imam Shafi'i, he says that he read the Kitab Al-Risala, Imam Shafi'i in Usul al-Fiqh, 50 marra, 50 times. Right? And this is mentioned in the Muqaddimah of the book. It's 50 times, imagine that. And that book, again, Kitab al-Risala, is a very in-depth book. It's Usul al-Fiqh, is very condensed writing and very full of benefits. So again, if Muzani is up there when it comes to fiqh, this is how some of the ulama, they got the repeating. And so this is also a benefit that if you don't understand something, you don't give up. Sometimes you have to read a smaller book to come back to the bigger book. Right? Sometimes that's what the problem. You don't have enough background information, so you have to read a small book. Then you come back and read the bigger book again. And if you don't understand, you read it again. And then sometimes what you need to do to understand, you have to summarize it. And now some of the books, they come with all the summaries on the side of each paragraph, what's saying. Because sometimes you might understand what the point is. So you have to try your best. I mean, it's a good effort for student knowledge and good etiquette as well, that we don't give up that easily. Some subjects may take more time. He says the 8th benefit, اختيار أوقات القراءة. Pick a time for reading. He says everyone is different. And in any situation, you know yourself, make for yourself a time in which you're prepared to read, and you read in that time. And again, he mentioned before the Shaykh that it's not a specific time. So it could be after Fajr, after Asr, night time, your choice, what's easy for you. But you have time for your readings. And this is important. Number 9, he says, buy books. If one of us buys a book, he says, especially there's many volumes, right? He must first read through it and browse through it. So this is very important. If you're going to buy a big book, you go through some of it to see what's in it. He says some of the books, right, he said are very very clear what their message is or what they're about. There's some books, right, they're written numbers, right, the volumes. So in any case, right, you try to look inside of it to go into it before you read it, right, before you buy it, sorry. And there's also etiquette in buying books as well, right, that the ulama, they mention on top of that, right. It's not just buying it and knowing what's inside of it, but also trying your best to know what is it, what's inside of it, especially a big book. And this is also etiquette. You're allowed to flip through the book, or you even check what is the book about, right? And on top of that, some of the ulama mention etiquettes in buying books, and we'll finish with this part because the Shaykh in the next chapter, he talks about the actual talab. Some of the ulama, they mention, some of the people who buy books, there's a lot of etiquettes or the fiqh to buying books, right? And so the book fair recently passed, and some of those benefits were reminded. For example, a person has to check the print of the book and the author. What's the best print available? That's the first one you're going to look for. What is the subject? You're looking for what's the best print in that subject. If it's a tahqiq, for example, who's the best muhaqqiq, the verifier of the book. Then when it comes also to the nuskha, which taba'a is it? The newest one, the oldest one. What's the best one? Right, so every book there's a best print. The cost of, obviously, the Shaykh is going to talk about later too some of that. Then he goes into more details. What kind of quality? Is it yellow paper, white paper? Cover, is it Lebanese or Egyptian? Right, so these are realities as well, right? So there's some prints that are no good, and some prints if you buy them, you might as well don't have it, right? You're gonna have a random book. So these are even some things you'll learn, but he's gonna talk about later too in the Shaykh in the book. So encouragement for us to read more, Ahlul Sunnah Jama'ah especially, and there's some topics you can read yourself, as we said, free reading, and some topics for studying. Inshallah, we'll end with this much, because the next chapter, Shaykh will talk more about the actual matter of talab ilm. If I don't have any questions, inshallah. Yes, that's a good point. Majid mentions, yes. So he says here that some of the books, when you're buying it, to go through it, because some of the books, they have white spots and stuff like this, right? That's the wording of the Shaykh, right? So when you're buying it, to make sure that you're not going to buy with a bad print. Barakallahu feekum. Right, and sometimes the print numbers and the volume numbers are off. Right, so sometimes the prints are not lining up with the volume number and the volume inside. Anyone has a quick question? Yes. So the PDF versus the print. This is obviously the print is the best, but the problem is sometimes space. Someone can't get it. So if you can't get it in print, then you try to get it in PDF. Especially if you can't have enough space for it or the cost is too high, then you can get the PDF. There's no harm in that. But obviously, the preference is for the print. But the problem is we don't have enough space sometimes for the prints. So we have to suffice with the PDFs. It's not or the iPad. All of us had, but the print is definitely the best. If you can afford it and you can get it and have a space for it, it's best. Allahu A'lam. Yes, brother. He's going to talk about the Sheikh, the beginner books and what we should be studying. Because right now he's just finishing the parts of adab. Then he's going to get into the act of talab. So it's going to come later, which books to study, which ones to begin with, like that. Inshallah. Yes, Sheikh. What was that? Asking questions is not only part of seeking knowledge, it's one of the best of ways to learn. You have to ask, and you have to be willing to ask, and you shouldn't be shy. So sometimes some people don't ask because they think it's not a good question, or they think they know the answer. But when they ask, it's a different answer they got, right? So sometimes you should ask. Anytime it's not clear to you, you should ask, and you shouldn't be shy. And also, this is one of the ways to learn. For example, let's say you study something, you didn't get it, and you ask someone, the sheikh after or a teacher, can you repeat it to me, what we just studied? And they repeat it to you, summarize for you. And you come back and I read this, you keep asking. That's how you're going to learn. That's the best students. So Ibn Abbas, when they asked him, how did you learn? When they asked him, he said, because I have a lot of lisan al-su'ul, I have a tongue that's often asking. So we have to be, even, in dunya is the same, right? When you go to class, you have to ask a lot of questions. The one who asks more gets better answers, better marks. But a lot of the times what happens is the brothers, they just listen and they leave. And if you're not going to ask, for example, then sometimes you're not being active within learning. So even yourself should ask yourself questions. If you got an answer, then you ask the teacher. Right? Or you ask, for example, the colleague, your brother, your students, or your friends who are studying with you, a question, none of us could understand it, we go ask. So asking is a key. It's very important. Good questions also shows someone who's in active learning. But what happens sometimes, the passiveness, you listen, you didn't review, you didn't ask. And what happens, you forget and you mix up things. So try your best to ask. Even if you don't want to ask in the class, after the class. Or ask private. Now you have the WhatsApp, you just, or some people they call on the Friday, whatever it is. Good for you, inshallah. This is very important about this, very important. Yes. That's a good point. Researching the question beforehand. Some questions have already been answered. So that's a good etiquette as well to check first. So why? Because maybe it's already answered, you asked it again. So I check. If it's not there, then you can ask. Or what you can do is you try to check it to see, especially if you have ability to. Some people don't have that. But let's say it's a question already taken, or a question where it's not that hard, or you can ask, research it, try to find out, then ask. Why? Because that way you can get more detail. But I think sometimes some people just ask anything, and it's not the best use of their ability. Because if you're a talib ilm, different than layperson. Layperson doesn't know, right, anything. But if you're someone who's seeking knowledge, you can do a little bit of your own research, right? At least check the old questions. Check the website, right, or something, right? Or check the Mashayikh Kibar, what they said about it. And that also helps because it shows you good question. Right? Nisfu ilm husn su'al, right? That's very important. Like a good question is half of knowledge. But also sometimes a good question is someone who's thinking. Right? So we encourage that. Try you do that, inshallah. It's better. Okay, last one, brother, yes. Say it again. Yes, the publisher as well. Yes, who published the book? What's the best print available? You have to ask that beforehand and check. So some of the ulama, they tell us different books, best print, and then there's sometimes the newer prints, and that becomes an issue as well. Some people buy the newest print every book, but sometimes it's not good to duplicate. Best to get the best print. If you know it, you wait for it to come out. If you can't get it, but yes, it counts. The publisher and some publishing housing are reputable and some are not. Right, so that's also okay. We'll give you one more. Yeah. So that's a new one now, the ChatGPT and people using AI. And we found, wallahu alam, generally it's not the most effective. Because like I said, sometimes it's going to tell you everything. Everyone said, Ahl Sunnah, Ahl Bid'ah. And the second problem, it has hallucinations, what they call AI hallucinations. So it just makes up something. Nobody said it. For example, there was one I was looking at, they asked him, is it wajib to wash your knee in wudu? And ChatGPT says, mustahab. Astaghfirullah azim, right? Astaghfirullah azim. He was so confident too. Now they took it down, but this is the new madhab they have. So we don't want to be going there with us. Some of us kind of lazy, we can just go and Google it, or even now Telegram is full of things. So what you have to do, go put it in reputable sources. And even the audios, you have to be careful. Some of the audios, you don't know who that sheikh is, you're not sure. So what you do is you go to official channels, very better, right? So this is important, will come later, but I agree that it's a reality. So it's not wrong to use, but you have to be very careful and try to your best just to go find the good sources. And we're going to see later what are those websites we should be checking, which ones we shouldn't, because this is a new reality that we have to deal with as well. بارك الله فيكم سبحانك بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك